There has been some confusion in the public domain surrounding the process through which we will appoint the next chairman of GECOM. Now, I want to quickly recap what took place to give viewers an indication of the clarity that we had surrounding the process. So sometime last week, we received a letter from Mr. Harmon indicating that their interpretation of the CCG's ruling is that the president will have a role in selecting nominees for the position of the chairperson of GECOM. My office responded and indicated in that response that the CCG ruling did not change the Constitution of Guyana. That therefore, the constitutional process has to be followed. And what does the Constitution of Guyana say on this matter? It says that the leader of the opposition has to submit 6 names not unacceptable to the president, from which he will select one person. So it is the leader of the opposition who has to submit the names. And secondly, that the process of selecting the 6 should be through consultations with the non-governmental political parties in Parliament. And there is only one non-governmental political party in Parliament now, and that's the People's Progressive Party. So the ruling of the CCG urged a consultative process. It says that we must communicate in good faith and perhaps meet to try to hammer out a list of names in an informal process, after which the formal submission will be made. The CCJ did not say that the Constitution is now overturned. So we pointed this out to Mr. Harmon in the response, and we said, however, in the informal discussions, we will not be averse to the president submitting or suggesting names for my consideration, because there may be names that the president would suggest that in my determination of the final 6, they could be included. And so we were not averse to that. The president has now submitted 8 names, and those names are in the public domain. But before I go there, let me talk a bit about the meeting we had with the president just last week. At that meeting, we sought to clarify the process moving forward. So we agreed that there would be the informal discussions and that we will name representatives, which we have done. But the responsibility still remains, the responsibilities still remain those of the president and the leader of the opposition. And that our representatives will meet almost continuously to consider the names submitted. So we further agreed that we will look at the first 18 names that I had submitted, appropriately adjusted, and then resubmit those names for consideration in the informal discussion, who have given their consent to do so. I asked the 18 persons, and 11 of them consented to have their names resubmitted, which we did. So further at the meeting, we had an agreement that the Constitution of Guyana was not changed by the CCJ ruling, and that a lot of what the CCJ had done was their advice was advisory in nature, that we should engage each other to avoid the contention that we had in the past. So I was very heartened when the president himself came and held a press conference, and he said, one, the CCJ ruling had not changed the Constitution of Guyana. And in today's press statement from the government and in the address to the nation, I did not see him mention the Constitution of Guyana, but at the press conference just after the meeting, he admitted and he said to the nation that the Constitution of Guyana remained unchanged by the CCJ's ruling, and therefore its provisions have to be fully applied. Two, he said, submitting names to himself that he has to reappoint, something to that effect, will be like, I can't remember the exact words, but it would be like submitting names to himself to reappoint. And that's not the way the Constitution should work. And the third issue he mentioned at the press conference, that former chairman of the Elections Commission, Patterson, is part of electoral history. So none of that view is represented in today's press conference and the press statement. No, the press statement that was issued by the government and the address to the nation. So when we went to the meeting yesterday, my representatives went to the meeting, they were given the names of 8 persons and were told that they had no instructions to discuss the 11. Now, the government could have easily sent the 8 names to us in a letter. They didn't need to convene a meeting to do so, but they did so. And today the meeting has convened again. Let us hope that we move forward with that understanding, the understanding that we had, and the understanding that is still the most important thing for Guyana, that the Constitution of Guyana must be upheld. The CCJ did not change the Constitution vis-a-vis the submission of names. And so there's 8 names submitted by the president. I don't have anything adverse to say about any of those individuals. I do not want to engage in a public process of destroying people's characters, etc. I have nothing adverse to say about them. President has made the suggestions in line with my letter, and I am prepared to consider the names to see whether they will be included in my final 6 that I submit to him. So the process that is ongoing now is an informal process. The formal process will be when I submit the 6 names to him. And this informal process is to see if we can find some commonality around names. So the discretion remains that of the leader of the opposition in accordance with our Constitution to determine the final 6. And I will, as I said before, I'll treat the president's suggestion seriously, but the determination will be mine, whether they will form part of the official list of 6 persons that I submit to him. I hope this offers clarity to many people out there because of the confusion surrounding this issue and the government's insistence on quoting out of context many sections of the CCJ's ruling without emphasizing, as the president himself agreed to and emphasized at his press conference, that the Constitution of Guyana in relation to the appointment of the chairman of GECOM remains unchanged, and that the role of the leader of the opposition is clearly defined in that provision of the Constitution.